Alright, so this is my back row revealing cards. These are cards that have effects that can help you reveal your opponent's face down spells and traps. So that way you can use that knowledge to play around their back row to perform your deck's main strategy, whether it be an OTK, whether it's just you just want to summon something, whatever. These are some good cards. Some are generic, some are not. We got a level 4 spellcaster like monster, the Stern Mystic, 1500 attack, 1200 defense. It's a flip effect monster. You said it right. If your opponent attacks, it flips up, you get the effect. You obviously want to play this after your opponent has already set up the field. So mainly if your opponent goes first, and you go second, you set a little back row. Now, if you set back row, of course your opponent will get to see your back row as well. But the main idea is for you to get the knowledge necessary because you plan to make a play. Or you could just set Stern Mystic by himself and then just, wait, get that knowledge you need of what your opponent's face down cards are, and then go off. A lot of decks are combo based. A lot of decks, like pendulum summoning, like decks that can pendulum summon and whatnot. You already have win conditions, win counts, as it were, necross, so forth and so forth. So just gaining knowledge of what your opponent has face down to know when the right time to go for game, basically. And that's the thing. Sometimes it's hard to tell when is the right time to go for game because the mystery, right? You don't know what your opponent's face downs are. Typically, you expect them to be traps. You expect them to have something to stop you. So you want to know if they have the outs, if they can stop you or not. And you don't want to end up in a scenario where you activate a card, and that card makes you discard a couple cards for you to special summon something, and then somebody changes the vanity emptiness, and then now you can't special, and then you just lost some cards. So then now your opponent has the advantage, and you just lost your advantage, right? You want to know that they have that, so that way you could prepare for it. That way you could wait an extra turn or two and draw your out to the vanity's emptiness, for example. But anyway, his effect is when he flips, all face down cards on the field are turned face up and then return to their original positions on the field. No card effects are activated when this card is turned face up. So it just reveals everything, and then just everything goes back down to the way it was. It's pretty simple. It's a level 4, it's a spellcaster's light. You can use it in spellcaster dash, you can use it in light attribute dash. It's generic. You don't need anything too special other than just to use them. You can side him in, you don't have to main deck him, He is level 4, so you can use him for synchro summon, exceed summon. Since he is a spellcaster, you can use monsters like Unary Fire, for example, which can be special summon while you have a spellcaster. So if you just so happen to set this like first turn and set some back first turn and set a card face down, like Compulse or something, end of your turn, your opponent summons something, tries to attack your monster, you compose, and then they set their back one, then they end their turn. Then on your turn you draw, you flip this. Now you get to see what their face down cards. Now you see they don't have anything that can stop you from some summoning Exotonite, for example, or even summoning a 3-star tuner, right, and going to Black Rose, right? So since they can't stop you from doing either one of those plays, then you could just go and do the play and then get some field advantage, because now you just hurt them badly, because the sooner you get them to less cards than you, the better, right? Because card advantage, that's the point. So that's a way you can win. That's a way you can kind of put the game in your favor, is by you being able to reduce their card pool, right? Reduce what they can use, their resources. So like I said, you can flip this, right? You can special this. That way you can still normal summon if you want to normal summon something. Anyway, Kroba, Sakuzi, right? It's a reptile, level 3, Earth, 800 attack, 1400 defense. Because it's a reptile, you can put it in any reptile-based deck, like any deck that can take advantage of the reptile attribute. You can use King Pharaoh Imp. Okay. There you go. You use King of the Pharaoh Imps. He requires 2 level 4s to create. Once per turn, you can detach a material from this card, add 1 reptile type monster from your deck to your hand. So of course, this is a really good card to use in any reptile attribute deck. You can add stuff like Kazekage, you know, and of course, you can add stuff like this. You can add Earthbound, Kokoraya. If I'm right, that's the lizard, the reptile, right? So you get the idea. It's the fact that you could search this, so it's pretty good that if you're running this in your extra deck and you got this in your deck, you know, you can use this to search out this, especially if you do like a first turn play, like first turn rabbit or something. It depends what you do. If you do a first turn, you know, exceed play, go into this, detach, and then go grab your Cobra Man. All right, now you have the ability to, you know, set it up a following turn and start gaining some knowledge, as it were. That's the idea, is to gain the information, gain the knowledge, knowing what your opponent does and does not have on the field at that given time, and then taking advantage of it. He's not a flip effect, but he has an effect that when he flips, he has an effect that you could put him face down once per turn on your main phase. But when this card is flipped face up, either by it being attacked or by you flip summoning it, look at all set spell and trap cards on your opponent's side of the field and then return them to their original position. You know what I mean? This card in its own way is obviously, effect-wise, is better than Stern Mystic in the fact that it only affects your opponent's side of the field, doesn't affect yours. So you can set this in set BackRow and not worry about giving away your card knowledge, right? Because the idea is for you to gain knowledge of what your opponent's playing. You don't want him to have knowledge of what you play. You want him to be surprised, especially if you have nothing. Like if the best card, the best thing you had was Cobra Man, you don't want your opponent to know that you don't have anything. You want them to think you have good cards, and you want them to hesitate and make bad plays because they're assuming you have Mirror Force and stuff like that, right? Anyway, so it's a pretty good card, and like I said, you could search it out. You can send it to the graveyard with cards that can, like, you know, like a Mathematician. You know, you can send it to the graveyard with Mathematician, for example. All right. Use Soul Charge, Monster Reborn, anything that could, you know, special summon monster. I forgot there was a spell card. Snake Rain is a way you can send it to the graveyard. Oh, here you go. Viper's Rebirth. So basically, activate only if all monsters in your graveyard are reptile type monsters. Select one non-tuner monster in your graveyard and special summon it. Destroy it during the end phase. So here's a nice little Monster Reborn. So you can bring this back, use this own effect to put it face down, and then you have the ability to flip it in the following turn to gain that knowledge that you want, so you can make the best plays because you know what you can and can't do, and what your opponent can and can't do. Those are monsters that can help you get that knowledge. But let's say you need the knowledge right here, right now. Your opponent went first, you went second. You got game, you got OTK. You want to go off. Let's say you have any cross and you want to go off, right? Well, lucky for them, they're white. They're water attributes. So then we have contact with the Aqua Mirror. If you control a face of water monster, activate one of these effects. If you control a face of water ritual monster, you can activate both of these effects. Hey, very convenient, right? And the cross just so happen to have both, right? All right, look at all set cards in your opponent's spell and trap card zone. Gotta get that knowledge, right? That way you know if they have the vanities, or the mistake, or macros, or whatever. You want that knowledge. You want to know if they can or cannot stop you. Or the secondary effect. Look at the top 2 cards of either player's deck and return them to the top of the deck in any order. That's cool, you know, controlling your deck and all. But the main use of this is that you're just going to use the whole look at all set cards, your opponent's spell and trap card zone. And again, this works just with face-up water monsters. Even works up with face-up ritual monsters if you want that extra ability. If you just so happen to play Crab Turtle, if you're old school and you like to play Crab Turtle, because it's one of your favorites. I like Crab Turtle, it's pretty cool. And he's water attribute, you gain 2 effects. You know what I mean? You get to know what your opponent's playing face down, as well as you get to control the top 2 cards of your deck. Or the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. Remember that. You can also use this effect on your second effect on your opponent. That way you know what he is and isn't going to get. And that knowledge as well is useful, especially when you can get both. That's another thing. Why not get both? If you have a ritual monster, get both. Know what he has face down, and then check out the next 2 cards. And if the next card is like Dark Hole, and the card after that is Dark Hole, and then I don't know, Trap Hole, something that can't stop the ritual summons, right? Whatever it could be, you know, Dark Hole, and then you just switch it out, right? So that way the next card they get is Trap Hole instead of Dark Hole. That way you don't have to. That way you have one. That way you gain an extra turn to take advantage of the fact that they don't got nothing to stop you, and you can, you know, go for game. Especially if you already dealt them like 4,000 this turn. Next turn you'll want to deal them another 4,000, right? You don't want them to take that from you by Dark Holing. It's common sense shit, right? All right, continuing on. Mind Hacksaws. Pay 500 life points. Look at your opponent's hand and all set cards on their side of the field. Not only does this give you knowledge of what they have face down, this also gives you knowledge of what they have in their hand, which can be just as powerful, especially if you go first, because I'm definitely a big fan of this card, and it's only 500 life points. It's worth it. The game just started. Who cares, right? You go first, set your field up, set this down, boom, your opponent draws, boom, activate this. Now you know the 6 cards in the hands. Now you have that knowledge. But that's why I like, it's really cool about this card, that if you go first, you can just look at their hand. Now you know what they have, and then, you know, play around it. Especially if you, let's say you have 1 warning, instead of warning the first thing they summon or whatnot, or warning something else, like or try to save the warning for later. I mean, if your opponent drops Denko Seiko, warning that motherfucker, obviously. But if you see that in their hand all they have was Denko, and they don't really have anything else, then you'll probably just save the warning. Let Denko hit the field. Doesn't matter, because you know you got stuff to kill it on your turn. Not a big deal. And save that warning for something important. So that knowledge is important to know. Should I warning Denko or not warning Denko? Typically you want to, but if your opponent has nothing, there's no point in wasting a warning. Considering the fact that Denko Seiko will only do 1,700 points of damage anyway. Warning is 2,000. I know it's 300 life points difference, but that 300 life points matter. It's your life points. You know, it's your life points. So keep it. Don't give it away for free. Let your opponent work to take away that 300 life points of yours. Anyway, again, Mind Hacksaw is great first turn, but is, of course, if your opponent goes first, you know, if you don't have the chance of going first, well, if your opponent goes first, sets up his field, all right, that's cool. Boom, you draw, play a couple cards, set this. In your turn, they draw, boom. Now, not only do you get the knowledge of what they set face down, you still get the knowledge of what they just drew, because now they got a card in their hand. Now you know what it is. So still, you have the knowledge, and that's the thing. So it's a win-win. This card is a win-win. There's no like, oh, you always have to play this first turn or something like that. For it to be effective, it's like, no, it doesn't matter. You go first or second, doesn't matter. This card is still effective regardless for just 500 life points. Granted, it's a trap. So in its own way, because of its own design, it's a trap, right? It's a trap. It itself is a weakness because, you know, there are counters to traps and whatnot. But other than that, it doesn't really matter because traps are supposed to be two, so, you know what I mean? You still, you know, you could chain it and whatnot to certain card effects. Moving on. This card is not exactly generic like the other ones, you know, pretty much are under the right conditions. This one is for the Alseers, the the Nordic monsters, archetype. So you gotta have one of their synchros, which is an Alseer. So once per turn, it's a continuous trap card. During either player's standby phase, you can select one face-up Alseer monster you control, negate its effects until end of the battle phase. Until the end of the turn, and look at all cards in your opponent's hand and all set cards they control. Cards and effects cannot be activated in response to this effect's activation. So when you activate this effect, no one can, like, I don't know, what could you do? Like, you can't, if I'm right, you can't start us assault mode, for example, or use anything similar to that. You know, an effect of a monster that can negate an effect of a card that just activate. Like, you can, like, they can't chain. A good example of this, they can't chain Yuki. Let me put her up very quick. Right, Yuki Usagi. Like, she can be activated at any time that an effect is activated. So even if something is continuously on the field, like a field spell, and then you activate the effect of Dragon Ravine, for example, you can pitch her to activate the effect and destroy Dragon Ravine, not allowing it to resolve to do its effect. But you don't have to worry about somebody using this to destroy this, because they can't not respond with a card effect. You know, stuff like that. But anyway, it's a good card. It gives you knowledge of their hand and field. And this is good even first turn. So if you first turn make like Odin or something, in case you don't know with it. And Alseer is what it looks like. Here's Odin, there's a Thor, and then there's a Loki. Anyway, this is an Alseer, and one of my faves, because he's the big boy, 4,000. So yeah, you summon him first turn, set back row, set the Odin's Eye, right? Use Odin's Eye on Odin himself, right? Negate his effects until end of turn, and now gain knowledge of what your opponent has in the hands, as well as, you know, whatever they have on the field. If they go first, then of course you make Odin, do what you do, set this, end your turn, your opponent draws, you activate this, now you have knowledge of what they have face down and what's in their hand, at the cost of taking away Odin's effect. Let me double check something. The one face up see monster you control. Let me see if there's any other Alseers. I had a feeling there was, because I remember that you need an Alseer to summon these. Okay, I thought these had the Alseer in their names, but they don't. You need Alseers to summon them. Anyway, continuing on. Pretty much that's it. It's just cards that help you gain that knowledge of what your opponent's face down. Two of my favorites, mainly because I don't want to use up my normal summon. If you're like me, you don't want to use up summoning, or you don't want to like splash these monsters in your deck, because let's say you're playing the cross, there's no point in splashing these, or you could just obviously play that or whatnot. Or if you have a machine deck, none of these are machines, you know what I mean, so forth and so forth. Granted, you know, these are will be kind of out of place in your decks, but if you could fit them in and use that knowledge, you know, that's very useful. They do make good side deck cards. If you have a monster mash deck, like a monster based deck, a deck that's full of monsters and very little spells and traps, these cards are pretty useful, because that knowledge is useful. That's the main thing. It's like, since you don't have the heavy stars, the lightning, the Harpy's Feather Dust, the MSTs, the Night Beams, all that stuff, right? You know, even if you're running a deck a lot of monsters and you don't have that, having these monsters in there to gain the knowledge, to know what they have face on, to know if they have the warning, the bombers, the mirror force, stuff like that, is very useful, especially in a deck where it's just a lot of monsters. Because since you have very little back row removal, you know, being able to gain the knowledge to know if they have any threats, so you could properly play around. If they have a mirror force, you might want to switch a couple of your ace, you know, some of your valuable monsters to defense to keep them safe from the mirror force and attack with whatever you got. And if your opponent does a mirror force, then that's their problem, because you're just going to keep attacking with the weaker monsters over and over again until they decide to do one or two things: mirror force or lose. It's the only options they're going to have. So obviously. But I'm a fan of Contact with the Aqua Mirror and Mind Hexors. Mine Hextras obviously can easily be splashed in any deck. Contact with the Aquamarine can be splashed in any water attribute decks. You can use it with Treeborn Frog. The deck doesn't have to be fully water attribute. As long as you have a water monster, you can play. Noden, right? Noden, the fusion is water. So even if even so, you could just instant fusion to Noden. Noden's water, right? That will allow you to play this and gain the knowledge where your opponent has face down. If your opponent has nothing, you use Noden to bring back level 4, right? Exceed, since he can't stop you from summoning Exciton and using Exciton Knight, and then you can just go off. And for those who might not know what Exciton Knight is, that's what he looks like, and that's the bad boy that can give you a lots of advantage under the right conditions. You gotta have less cards than your opponent, but it wouldn't be that hard since you're activating cards to summon him in the first place. And that's the end of the video.